Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. How are you doing?
I'm doing decent, Ryan. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I am so happy to be here to talk about movies with you, Bartek. We're getting closer to the end of the year. I'm getting that feeling of, ooh, we're getting close to Christmas time, and that means a Christmas movie will eventually be picked by one of us, and I can't remember who it will be landing on this time.
I know that immediately before Christmas is Listening People's Choice, and a few days after it's me, and when I looked at the list of Listening Choice, I'm like, oh, well, there's an obvious Christmas film. Maybe that will be it.
Well, we'll see how it all goes, but we're not there yet, Bartek, but we are still spitting. And we are still Polish, and what a fun time to be both of those things. Why? Because we're here, Bartek, talking movies. You know, I still appreciate that we can be in the same room, talking films, talking movies, not having to worry about connectivity issues and all that garbage. And we're doing Pictures Powwow, in which we talk about a movie that has come recommended. You recommended the film that we'll be discussing today. What is that film?
The film is a 2012 French film called The Other Sun.
Yes, The Other Sun, French film. Very important to note, because what's the film about? Just to kind of let the people know and kind of sell them on it.
Yep, so the big, topic of the film, if you want to come into the film with some more foreknowledge of, something relevant, would be about the Israeli-Palestine conflict. And that's such an obvious and memorable thing for me, having seen this film 10 years ago, that I forgot that the film was made in, it's a French film. I remember there were multiple languages in it, and I thought, it's going to be either like an Israeli or a Palestinian film, but then French kind of, blindsided me. They're like, oh, this film was French.
Yeah, I don't want to speak, in the wrong manner, but if this was a film made by Israel or Palestine, do you think it would be sympathetic towards the other side being told in the story, as in how this film does it? Because this film seems pretty neutral or understanding of both sides of this, and I don't know necessarily, I haven't seen any Israeli or Palestinian films, if they could even be allowed to do that, let alone actually do that. I don't know, because to kind of, of course, people, if you have not seen the film, watch the film. It is definitely interesting and worth a watch. Hopefully you can find a copy of it. I had a little bit of difficulty getting my hands on this, but we recommend at least giving it a watch. It's something to behold. We will be talking spoilers. To get my history, I did not know about this movie, did not know anything about it, other than you mentioned at the end of last episode what it was briefly, that it was a French film, but it deals with this kind of conflict. And I could kind of gather with the title, The Other Sun, roughly what this was going to be about. And then as soon as the blood test thing in the very beginning got mentioned, I was like, oh, I think I know what this is going to be.
Yeah.
And then it did play out like that, and it was, it was a whole entire thing. But I'm not as knowledgeable or worldly enough to know the complexities of the Israel-Palestine conflict. I know the broad strokes kind of thing, but I don't know all of the nuances of it. It seems like a very complex issue, and so watching this movie, I was worried if it was going to rely on my knowledge of that. Kind of like, what was that film?
Gribovica.
Which was, what was that in English? The title? Did it have a translation, or was that just name the city?
I think that's the name of the city, but there was a localized title that was Esma's Secret.
Esma's Secret, right.
To make it a bit more like, there's something here.
Secret. Yeah. Where was that set again? That was...
I think that was a Bosnian film.
Yeah, and I didn't know much about Bosnian history, and that film did unfortunately rely on a little bit of me knowing.
That's why last week I mentioned Israel-Palestine conflict. Ever since Gribovica, I've been a bit more conscious about that. If there's anything I should mention.
But I want to say that I followed this quite easily. I didn't feel as if I was lacking just because I didn't know as much about the conflict. The film still translates across quite well when it comes to the matter at hand, which is these two different families, two different values, two different cultures, antagonistic cultures having to form a strange bond because of the situation that's playing out. So I had no history with this. Watched it this morning, I should say, and it was a bit of a journey because to get into a detour for a second here to bitch.
Yes, sure.
Bartek and I have often bitched about this on and off the podcast to find movies, whether they be the foreign films that you recommend, Bartek, or even just normal Hollywood films that we watch. It's a gamble of how Australia's streaming services are actually going to give us those, whether they're the big ones like Netflix or Stan, or they are the local TV on-demand stations. For this one, it's on a TV station that we have called SBS, and it's on their streaming service that they have, where they have the replay and they have all these films banked up. You have to watch it with the ads and stuff.
Yeah, and in the past, I've watched, I think, The Wave and AI on there, and it was, no problem. Like, it's free, and there were ads, and that's the only, downsides.
That was the only place where I could watch The Wave, right? And that's why I watched it, too.
And that's why I picked it. It's like, oh, easy access.
Yeah, easy access, but Australia is always difficult because one we have often encountered is, it's on there, and then by the time we get there, it's suddenly not on there anymore. We've had that a few times. This has been a new one where I went to SBS, went on there, and for some reason, the frame rate of the movie was super choppy.
Yeah.
It was like I was watching a video game chugging along. I haven't really seen that with a movie on a streaming platform before. Like, I know I've often seen buffering, but I haven't seen, it was just choppy. And
it was all loaded, but it was really choppy.
And I thought, am I being the dumb one here? Is it my internet? Because I have had internet issues over the last couple of days, just random stuff here and there. And I thought, is it me? I don't use SBS, Bartek. I'll ask you. I texted you, and you hadn't gotten around to having a look at it yet. And then you confirmed it was on your end too. So that had to push us to watch it elsewhere and source it elsewhere. And I double-checked. No other movies on SBS's site had this particular issue. So it was this one. Something they did that uploaded this movie, something fucked up.
The only thing that stood out about this film when I first confirmed that it was on there was that it didn't have an expiration date. It seems like this film is permanently up on there. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but
it's confusing. So I tried not to let that bother me when watching the movie, but it may have bled in because there was a level of frustration where I had to watch this the next day. I had it all I don't have to look for it. Bartek said it's here, and I confirmed, it is there. And then I sat down at 9 o'clock at night being like, okay, I've done all the stuff I need for today. I'm going to sit down and watch this movie. And then the movie slapped me in the face and said, fuck you, you can't watch it right now. And then I had to fucking watch it in the morning.
Again, like I mentioned with the Gribovica thing, I'll confirm, anything that needs to be known before watching the film. And now, if it's on SBS On Demand, I'll confirm that it's a decent, copy.
It's so silly what we have to jump through. We've talked about this a lot. Australia, and it's not just us. People, if you have this kind of these issues all in your country, let us know. But we're going off what we know, and we have this so much, these kind of weird-ass availability issues, or actually just quality watching issues of movies that are available. It's so fucking stupid. It makes the barrier of watching a movie like this even greater.
Yeah. Now that I remember it, I've watched a couple of films on Stan for the podcast, and most of them have been fine. But I remember the very first one I watched, and I mentioned it in our episode, was She's the Man. And I remember mentioning, I experienced Stan for the first time. If that's the quality it's on there, I don't think it's worth the price. But that's been the only one that's been, kind of iffy.
Tell us about your history with the movie. So you saw this in the cinema?
Yes. There's a cinema really close to Elstonwick Station, I believe. It's a nice little one. I think it might be Palace, but I can't remember. I haven't been there in ages. I saw this one in the cinema with my mum. It's another one of these films. One that she found out about through whatever means she has to find out about films at the time, and said, hey, this is interesting. Do you want to go see it? And at the time, I said yes to everything. So it was just a blind viewing experience. But again, the title, The Other Son. Okay, there's gonna be two sons of some sort going on. And like you said, it's pretty obvious once you know the Israel-Palestine thing of like, oh, it would be a really interesting premise if this was like babies were swapped at birth and they were from these opposing sides, and that's exactly what it's about. So we saw it, 2012. And I remember we both walked away, feeling happy and uplifted about the film because there is a lot of heartwarming things in it. But I remember this has been a film that it's been stuck in the back of my mind for the past decade with this kind of thought of like, oh, is it actually like a good film? Like objectively, is there a lot to this film that's worth, recommending to other people? And so even though it's been stuck in my head for these 10 years, I've always been kind of hesitant to recommend it because it's like, I walked away with an uplifting experience, but,
Will others?
Yeah.
And will you upon a rewatch?
Yeah, it's been a lot of thoughts on that level. Like, the film ends, and I remember thinking like, oh, there wasn't really as much conflict in the end. Like, the conflict is kind of introduced early on and, like, slowly, progresses over the course of the film.
Yeah, it slowly wilts away as well.
Yeah, and the film really ends on this, like, kind of uplifting note, which is weird to say considering what happens in the second last scene, but...
Here's what I'll say, and you can correct me if you feel otherwise. This is my interpretation. I think you have a more difficult time recommending slice-of-life type films to others. Because that's been this idea that you're talking about has been referenced when you've recommended other movies on the podcast, like that anime movie that we did about the deaf girl.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you like it and it's something that's stuck with you and you wonder how it'll feel on a rewatch and it's like, how would others feel? And I understand that because I think sometimes slice of life movies, this is obviously different to some of the previous ones we've done on the pod because it's also like live action and it's like a French Middle Eastern, all type of weird stuff.
Yeah.
But it's hard to recommend those type of movies to people because they strike a chord with each viewer in a certain type of way that's different to, say, when you recommend Doctor Strangelove. It's like Doctor Strangelove, it's like, let's talk about Kubrick and let's talk about the filmmaking style. While here, it's like, what did you think about that scene in which the brother and the, they just, all that kind of stuff. It hits a little different. I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, that does sound right. Yeah. It's, I guess, to really differentiate it from a lot of the Hollywood films we watch where there is like a sort of raw appeal to a lot of them. Like if you have this one, there's, a fair bit of comedy throughout. You might like laugh and point out the moments you remember there. And as we've talked about, like most American films have like that moment where everyone claps and like it feels really triumphant. Whereas this one, it's like a very moody, European-ish emotional journey kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in terms of that, like, raw appeal thing that you want out of a film, like this one doesn't really feel like it has that as much. So it's like, oh, well, who do we recommend it to? Like with this show, obviously, it's more of a general recommendation thing.
Yeah. So how was your revisit?
It was a good revisit. I came to terms with some of those iffy feelings I was having because, again, over these 10 years, thought to myself like, oh, was there much of a conflict? And there was one. There was plenty of it, and it was just interwoven throughout like the first two acts of the film.
Yeah. I enjoyed this movie, but I thought it outstayed its welcome. That's how I would describe it. The last... I clocked it. I didn't look the whole time of like where I was in the movie. There came a point where I was like, where the fuck am I with this? And it was exactly an hour and 32 minutes in. I checked and I was like, oh, okay. Like I felt we could come to a conclusion now.
So that's like 15 minutes before it ends, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So what I'm saying is it outstayed its welcome by like 10, 15 minutes for myself. I found myself, I liked all the conflicts, I liked the character stuff, the interplay, I really loved the acting, I thought every actor did a really good job. There were some actors who I wasn't too sure of them, but then the film gave me more of them and the performer that I was bought into them, like the elder brother who disowns the whole entire thing, and then at the end he turns around and he becomes a good... I wasn't too sure about that character and his acting, and I wasn't too sure, and then the film won me over. There's an aspect to this in which I felt, I I don't know how to describe it. I think this is just, again, a general pacing issue, and again, a format of this kind of slice of life affair in which I did feel it was vignettes or episodic in parts. Like, there was a specific moment in which the Palestinian mother sat down with the son who was being a dickhead, and she had that whole conversation about, like, open your heart.
Yeah,
and
you've
all
got
of
a
that.
big one.
And I like that scene, but when the scene started, it was there was the three characters, then the one left, and I was like, oh, and it made me recollect on our times being in drama in university and how we did theater scenes, and now I was like, oh, and now this is the duologue scene between these two characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept noticing that as the film went along, of almost like, here's a spotlight for these two characters to have a duologue about the conflict. So the two dads meet up now, and these three brothers, like, meet up now, and I kind of noticed the mechanics of that a little bit too much. And I don't know if this was based on anything in particular outside of being a film. I don't know if this came from a book or from a stage show or from something else. I don't know. I didn't see anything noting that down. I didn't look, in all honesty, but I did feel that a little bit. I felt a little bit of and now we're having this little episode or this little scene. I didn't feel as if the film was a whole piece as much as I would have liked. And I think that comes down to, again, for me, it runs just a little bit too long. It outstayed its welcome just a tad. And when that happens, it doesn't necessarily wash away all the merits of the film, because I did like this film a lot, but it did make me... You know what it's like when a film is good and you like it, but it's outstays its welcome. You start thinking about how you could fix this or how this could be done. Heck, I even had this thought of, if this was a true story, I'd just like to have watched the doco about this. That type of deal was flowing in my brain.
Yeah, you were, I guess, in a sense, analysis mode. You weren't as engrossed in it because you were thinking about, how it was made.
And then the film ended. I don't know how to feel about the ending of the movie, because I was just like, oh, this is the end now? Why is it now? I don't know. But
I didn't think of it so much in, like, the drama terms, but definitely there are a lot of scenes, and a lot of them were very short scenes, where, a main point is hit, and I ticked in my head of, like, oh yeah, that point, this happened because of this thing, and maybe that's because I've seen the film before, but it's like, the parents, the Israeli parents at the beginning, they kiss, then they go to the cinema, then they have the line of, like, why didn't you tell me earlier? And it's like, oh, okay, yep, they're ticking the point of the dad now knows. You didn't say anything. Oh, yep, that's another thing of, like, he's being emotionally repressed, just a lot of ticking points of, like, yep, this is the reason why they're doing this kind of thing.
With the movie date, that's also a tick, because then you get the scene near the end of the movie where she's there by herself, and it's like showing how this whole entire affair has put a divide and a rift within the happy dynamics of the families involved, and how it's causing turmoil, and these people need to reconcile their differences. I did like... okay, I want to pull it back. Like, I really enjoyed this still. I liked how maturely the characters acted. I really liked that the two sons that were swapped, they didn't react like idiots to this. They reacted really sincerely. I liked how they bounced off of each other, really. Like, I liked that there was that level of, I want to be your friend, I want to know who you are, but also this, you have the thing now that I had.
Yeah, they have identity crises.
But they weren't dicks to one another. It wasn't as if, in a typical Hollywood situation of this there would be the Palestinian one, the poorer one, would be the more sympathetic one, and then you have the Israeli one who's the rich boy who's less sympathetic because he's vapid and rich. They play those ideas, but they don't vilify and strawman them. You feel sorry for Joseph. He was going to be in the army, his friends, he's now going to be the musician, I guess, but he didn't really know that was going to be the thing he was going to do. He had a life, and he had his friends, and he liked clubbing, and
his religion. Yeah.
And his religion. Oh, I want to talk about that stuff. But they humanized him when he could have just been the vapid rich boy character, and they didn't straw man or make a caricature out of the Palestinian one. He was going to be a doctor and all of this stuff. It wasn't as if he grew up with a house that was like 3 walls and there's a goat in there and all that kind of shit. The usual standards of these things. And I've got to be honest, my favorite character in the movie was the Palestinian father. I really liked him. I thought how he was grappling with his situation and his eventual arc of growing to be complacent with it and appreciate it. I found it really compelling. I really thought, although I don't speak the languages, I love that, the languages.
Well, you speak one of them.
Yeah, English. I thought his acting was a standout out of the cast. Him and the Israeli mother, the French, I guess she's French, right? But she's still Israeli. And so... Yeah. I thought those two were the strongest performers to me. Those are some of the things I really enjoyed. What about yourself? What were some of the things that stood out to you 10 years ago? And did they still ring true after all this time?
What did stand out 10 years ago? I think 10 years ago, the thing that stood out the most was the Palestinian brother, the Bilal.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because I remember he was very much the kind of aggressive one among the entire two families. And I kind of thought like, oh man, is this going to lead somewhere, dark? Like I thought there was going to be some sort of like violent turn where he does something that can't be undone. And then obviously one of the big emotional things at the end is like, oh, he does turn around like very sincerely. Like in this viewing, as weird as that ending was, I really liked the hospital scene where like
I did too.
Where he was like, "Oh fuck you, man! Why are you talking like this? You're alive. You should celebrate." Things like that. I was like, "Wow, this is a real turnaround." Like I kind of forgot this.
I liked his character a lot as well. He has these intense eyes.
He does, yeah. Especially when there are like 2 or 3 scenes where he like just stares at one of them.
He has these light-colored eyes as well, and it makes him stand out from everyone else. But I really like the scene. I guess his turnaround is when he actually meets the brother, his actual biological brother. That's what really turns him around, I think. Because throughout the whole film, I was thinking, well, are the Israeli family going to visit the Palestinian family? I know that there's going to be issues with that, but are they going to...
Especially with military dad, yeah.
Are they going to do the same courtesy? And the son doing that courtesy and actually meeting this brother, that really turned him around. He got to meet this biological brother, and he treats him like a brother. He's like, you are my brother. But then it makes him reconcile and reflect upon the brother he's grown up with and how this is actually his brother too. While I think throughout the movie, him not actually meeting this elusive figure that is standing there in the family without actually being there, being the I'm actually your biological brother, screwed with his head a lot, because it would screw with you a lot. And he was a fascinating character. What else did you enjoy back then from your recollections, or what really hit this time around?
Yeah, from my recollections back then, it's a bit hazy now, but definitely now, like you said, a lot of the performances in this were really, really good, especially the fathers and the mothers. Like, they all played it. I think, all 4 of them kind of hit different points. Like, the fathers, obviously both of them were kind of repressed and, not wanting to talk about it, but they did it in interesting different ways. Like, you'd think the military father would be, like, the one that yells a bit more, is a bit more aggressive, and he does have those moments, but like
the fights.
Yeah,
about the whole Israel-Palestine conflict.
Yeah, but in the whole first scene when you meet the Palestinian parents, like at the hospital, like your favorite character, the Palestinian father, like doesn't say a single word. It's all just in his physical acting. And then once they leave, like that's when he starts ranting, and it's like, oh wow, okay, this he seemed a bit more like, timid in those scenes, and now we're really seeing like, okay, no, he was just kind of holding back, and that was really interesting.
But then you do get the scene of when the son does come back from France and he says hello to the dad. He's underneath the car. And the son knows something's up because the dad's just so weird. And then we see the dad has a tear come down his face underneath his fix in the car. That was really good. He has a complex character, complex performances. With the military father, that one, I also loved to pieces how he wasn't the tropey, cliched army dad who's really disappointed his son isn't going to be in the army like him. He seems relieved by it, but also not cartoonishly so. That did bring a little conflict where it's like, it's good that he's not joining the army. It's like, why? Because he's an Arab? No. All of that. And yeah, I appreciated he wasn't, even though he's a man of the military, that didn't fuel his a deep-seated prejudice against the Arab family like you would think it would in a movie like this.
Yeah, he had the sternness of the military dad, but he didn't really have the, like, everything's about the military, you gotta be in there or whatever.
We're gonna crush them, we're the best, and all of that kind of stuff. I was surprised because I saw the pitch of this, I saw scenes play out, and I was thinking how this will turn sour. So, for instance, when the Palestinian son comes home, he's standing up in the car outside, out of the sunroof. Everyone in the neighborhood is cheering him and doing all of the stuff, and everyone's happy, and it's really showing you the visual difference in that sequence of the Palestinian Arab world in comparison to Tel Aviv. And I was waiting for, and they really hammered home how important everyone feels about this character, the Palestinian son, and how everyone respects him as a great Arab and all that.
Were they going to turn on him?
When they find out that he's a Jew, because that's how they all treat it, right? So the rabbi's like, he's more Jewish than you. When I heard that scene, I was like, okay, when are they going to turn on this guy? And the whole community is going to turn on this guy, and that's going to be like a major conflict in the movie. Instead, it was just his brother.
Yeah.
And the rest of the community didn't really find out. They were like, he's a cousin, like the actual son is a cousin. I was waiting for that to happen, and there came a point where I knew it wasn't going to happen, and I was relieved because I feel that may have taken away from the size of the story. This is a small story, and I feel as if you brought that in, this would have been a bigger story than it needs to be for this film. I could see this story being like one of 3 films where you follow them as they grow up and older in life. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
There was a film you would love, I think it's on Netflix, there's a documentary called 3 Identical Strangers. It's a documentary about these 3 identical brothers who lived in New York, and they accidentally found each other.
You've given me a copy of this and I've watched it.
Oh, you have? I forgot. There's so many documentaries I always think I need to tell Bartek, right? But you remember this film.
And you're right, I did love it. It was great.
It was a great film, and I could see with this conflict in this movie kind of what their lives were in real life being spread across several films, where it's like this is the meeting phase of this, where you're excited and you're figuring out all the difference, and then you have the middle phase in which everyone's got their own lives. Do you still keep in contact with these people because they're your family, but you didn't grow up with them? And the older stage of life where you explore that even further, and like you have kids, and do you want all of that? I could see this really expanding out into more than just this story here, but I was appreciating that it kept small, because I know you saw it 10 years ago, but did you ever think of that aspect that I'm talking about, where you're watching the film and you're seeing all these things set up, and you're thinking, because of how films traditionally go like this, of how the bitter payoff is going to be? Did you ever think about that?
I guess I did think of the sense of, like, you could definitely dive deeper into a lot of the characters, more personal experiences with it. Like, both families have a little sister character, and they get only a little bit to do, especially the Palestinian sister, who gets, not all that much, but she seems pretty happy with everything.
She was the one I remembered more.
No, I'm not saying that she was unmemorable, but, like, she didn't really seem to have any sort of like conflict going on, which isn't a criticism. I'm just saying that, like, you could have. In an alternative version, you could have dived deeper into her and many other characters.
Yeah.
Like the Israeli sister, like, she had a bit more like snarky things of like, so we sending him back. Like, I was telling my friends, but no one really cared.
Yeah, that's right. When I think of the Palestinian one, I think of her with the doll and having the tea party, and she still loves the brother as the brother, and
loving little sister.
Yeah, I guess that's the contrast between the two sisters. One's way more loving than the other in that regard, less snarky. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Ooh, there's so many great scenes here. Yeah, I really liked how all the characters bounced off of each other and played off of each other. I didn't feel they were vilifying any of them in a way that wasn't unearned.
Mm.
Again, the eldest brother who was distant and antagonistic, I understood where he was coming from, you know. I didn't think it was right, but I understood it
Yeah.
for his character.
This is definitely a film where I think the fact that neither of us are Israeli or Palestinian like gives us a different perspective on it, like a bit more neutral, kind of like what you're saying with what this film is. It's a French film. It's not one or the other. I could only imagine, like, you know, a diehard Israeli, diehard Palestinian might have, you know, more strong feelings about the film, and perhaps that character Bilal is a bit more representative of that, since he is the one that, you know, takes it so harshly. Like what the Palestinian dad was saying on the way home of like, oh, what if my sister finds out about this? People go crazy, and Bilal is the only one that finds out about it who does kind of go a bit intense on it all. Like, and you know, straight off the bat, like he takes off the shirt that his brother gave him, just throws it down. It's like, oh, there it is right there.
It's right there for you. Oh, man, that was intense. I thought the scene where...
Oh, yeah, because another thing, like, he was very loving before that point. Like, there was only one scene where, like, he just started talking about Israel and his mum just had to calm him down. It's like kissing his brother, hugging him.
There was a scene where Bilal was talking to his friends, and there's that one guy trying to sell cans of, was it Coke or something?
I think it was Coca-Cola, yeah.
That scene was intense, because it showed you a crossroads for his character he could go down. He could go down this explosive, hate-filled, antagonistic track he's on, or he could go down the road, which he eventually does, which is a more holistic, nice, understanding approach. And I'm glad that he did go down that road, because again, I did sit there going, okay, how is this film going to mine the drama out of this pitch? Because the pitch is one of those movie, like, this is such a great pitch for a film where you have the two sides that aren't too different, but very different, and they hate each other, and there's this conflict, but, oh, now they have to reconcile. You know, you could see that play out.
Let's wait for the Hollywood remake.
Yeah. How sad. Where it will be a Trump supporter and a Bernie Sanders supporter, and they actually had their babies swapped.
In my head, I was thinking, oh, it's still Israel and Palestine, but like, yeah, you're right. They would have to Americanify it, Republican, Democrat.
Right. Yeah. Maybe one's a black family, one's a white family, and that makes it even funnier.
Or if it's a period piece, it'll be like, oh, the North and the South.
Oh, yeah, it's a civil war. Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's awesome. I like my version where one family's black, one family's white, but the babies nobody noticed. Kind of like in Steve Martin's The Jerk.
That didn't connect until you mentioned it. You're right. That is funny.
In the Steve Martin film The Jerk.
Yeah, he's in a black family.
And they told him it would grow. He would grow into being black.
That was also one of the ending twists of Tromeo and Juliet. I'm adopted son. I'm black.
Written by James Gunn.
Yep.
Tromeo and Juliet. Yeah, let's talk about the religious side of this. I was really happy they tackled that and showed it for the tragedy it was, because when it happened, okay, so when this situation unfolds, I asked, oh, I wonder how this affects him being a Jew. I don't know too much about Judaism. And I'm like, and I actually said to myself, oh, it should be fine, because he's been raised Jewish and he's done all of these things. And then the rabbi laid it out. It's like, yeah, well, 2 out of 3 actually isn't good enough. You need to be the third one. He's more Jewish than you.
Yeah.
You need to do all these other hurdles, and you're not really Jewish. Sorry. And
he had like that smile the whole time. It's like he's trying to be gentle about it, but it's making it more painful.
But then when the rabbi comes back in the movie and he gives him this scornful look, and that makes the Joseph character run off and go to Palestine and visit the family. Yeah, I don't know what to make of it, because it does put the Jewish faith in a very mean-spirited light, I guess. It did not make me sympathetic towards the Jews in this moment, but that's a part of the tradition, the culture. It's touching upon that. But it was one of those things where it's like, oh, come on. Now you're just saying that his whole entire life is worthless. He's defined himself as a Jew, and now you're saying you're not a Jew, you're not good enough. And the other son is more of a Jew than you are. And it was devastating. Truly, got me in the heart real good.
Yeah, I also don't know too much about Judaism, despite the fact that I have seen the most Jewish film of all time, Keeping Up with the Steins. But I did have that idea in my head, like, oh yeah, there is a sort of like conversion process that you have to go through. And I'd forgotten about that scene until it began. Like, oh yeah, I remember this scene was pretty intense. And yeah, it's like you need to have circumcision, you need to accept the Torah, and you need to bathe with 3 rabbis or something like that. And it's like, okay, you've definitely done the first one. Second one should be easy for you, and then this. I
think he's already done the second one. He already had his bar mitzvah.
Yeah. And even though that sounded like a very simple process, like, oh, you can do that, it's just hammering home that idea of like, you all along have been an outlier. You haven't truly been Jewish, even though in your heart and in your mind, like he even said, like, you know, I was one of your best students. You said this yourself. You know, that I think that scene really just kind of tears into the heart. Like, as much as both sons in this film are really good, like I feel like Joseph gets a lot more focus, and I think that scene is one of the ones that really highlights the identity crisis is a bit stronger, because, you know, there's a lot of comparison to that other brother. There wasn't as much, I think, with the other one. Was his name Yassin?
Yeah,
Yassin.
Well, he is a character, the Palestinian Yassin. He has a much more defined view of himself outside of being.
He's much more worldly too.
And it doesn't seem that, like, the film... This is something. The film didn't dive into this, which is, I guess, I don't know. It didn't have the parallel scene of, is he no longer a Muslim? You know? Because the Jews are like, you're not a Jew now because of this, and you're right of your mother, but... I don't know. Like, I imagine he's not considered a Muslim either, but the film didn't really delve into that, and he didn't really ever have that as a grappling thing. People just made comments of, like, you're a Jew now, I guess. So you're going to go over there and get your name changed. It was more of his brother, antagonistic. Are you going to be a Jew? Are you going to do this now? Rather than what Joseph went through, which was an actual religious institution he's been a part of, denying his faith and saying, you're no longer this, you need to do this to become it.
Yeah, I guess in my head I didn't think of it as much because, once again, I don't know much about Islam either, but I figure that maybe Muslim faith doesn't really have that kind of conversion thing, and it's a bit more accepted, like, oh, you can be Muslim if you believe. But
I don't know.
That's just my idea, but I might be wrong about that.
They focus more on being Arab than that. They did mention being Muslim and all of that, of course. But
yeah, I guess with them it's more about you're not the oppressed people.
Yes.
Rather than the faith.
Yes. But I found that...
Because ultimately they're both Abrahamic religions. When they talk about God, they're talking about the same one.
Yeah. Just different things.
Yeah, just throw a Christian son in there somewhere.
I'm trying to think of other things I want to chat about with this. What are some things that you want to discuss?
I guess since we are talking about the 2 sons now, the swapped at birth ones, you kind of already brought this up, but it's really good how distinct they were. They were both played very, very differently while still being very effective, and, you know, the scenes where they interact with each other really... You know, they're very interesting, like, because there is a little bit of ribbing each other of like, oh, I'm smoking a blunt with my worst enemy or something like that.
I'm selling more ice creams than you.
Yeah, the ice cream scenes were really good because...
They were awesome. I loved those scenes. They were really fun.
The Palestinian son,
Charmin.
He was super charismatic.
Which I didn't get that vibe from him until, like, I guess so. I don't know. He was going through a lot.
But
so to see him be a little bit more playful like this was nice.
Yeah, but it takes actually a little while for him to show up. Like, a lot of the DNA stuff had already been settled by that point. The parents already know. And by the time he appears again, like, you know, he has that little line about, like, you know, why are you carrying the suitcase? It has wheels. And it's like, oh, they made you into a lazy European. Yeah, it's like, yeah, he's got like little lines like that.
It was building tension and suspense because we've seen how one son reacts to it. How will the other son react? And what's the other son like?
Yeah, we hadn't even seen any of the photos of him either.
Oh, a thing that I do love about the sons is when all three of them are together, when the elder brother joins them. I thought they had a great rapport with one another. I thought they all bounced off each other really well as characters and as actors, because they're all drastically different characters, and it is a really bizarre situation to find yourself in, but they all kind of treated it like how we do, you and I, when, you know, we're all roughly the same age. We all have similar interests. We're just a bunch of guys hanging out, and that's how they treated it. It wasn't as emphasis on, oh, we're forcing this family relationship. That's the stuff I really liked, of looking around town and the brother who's just coming to Israel. He has that whole thing where it's like, wow, they're loaded out here, isn't it? And then the clubbing brother, and all that kind of stuff. It was fun. It was fun hanging out with him.
Yeah, as much as the eldest brother Bilal, as much as like he had the whole central thing with both brothers throughout the film, actually seeing them, all three of them together, like, there was actually something really nice about that. It's like, yeah, this is a trio that like really works. I would have liked to have seen more of this. Obviously, not saying that that's a criticism of the film, because it had to lead up to this, but it was a really nice and kind of rewarding thing. Like, even as you said, that the ending does kind of, you know, drag on a bit too far. Like, that aspect at least was really good.
Yeah, like I said, I could see more films exploring these characters down the line, and in the second film, or one of the films of this, where I could see the two brothers, the two sons, kind of separating off and having a bit of a rift because of life and all of this stuff. I could see him being the guy who's like, come on, guys, kind of turning around from where he's been in this movie.
Bring the band back together.
Yeah. One thing I think I should discuss, and because I have a really, I guess, personal insight into this, is my family.
When I was watching the film, like, I didn't consider this, but maybe Ryan will have something to say.
So both of my parents were adopted, and both of my parents have met their biological families at some point late in their lives. So my dad in his 40s, my mum in her 50s, and
your mum was really recent, right?
Yeah, it was like within the last year or two.
Yeah.
And so, and you know, they have kids of their own, and now so on and so forth. You're having to form this bond with all of these people, whether it just be your direct mother or father, but now you're like, oh, and I have sisters and relatives, and they have kids, and this whole entire ordeal. And I understand that, and I won't speak on the complexities of how it is for everyone, because it's different for everyone, and this film has a very specific type of thing it's hitting with the cultures. But it is a awkward, timid phase of life for people like us, and one of the things I wish the film explored more of, or had more scenes of, were the families just chatting to one another about life. So one of the scenes that I found that struck a chord with me, that was so true to my experiences with this, is the two mothers looking at the photo, and we don't even see what the photo looks like, and then that mother going, hey, he looks like this person, and this, and the dad, and oh, that's happened so much. And the comments about, hey, the musical skills, he gets that from you. I wish there was more of that throughout the movie, because that's the human experience of it that I understand more so. While the film, it explores many things, but it does touch upon those metaphorical and thematic things that movies have to do. And I feel like it could have hit upon some of those little moments more so.
Yeah, I don't have the same experience of like, adoption or, meeting unknown family members like that. But even those little comments, like I've had those like, oh yeah, you look like this specific uncle of mine. Or like, oh, you don't like fish? Oh, that's just like your great grandfather.
Yeah, right. And I guess you have this though, right, where your father, he's in Poland and you don't get to physically see him all that much, but when you do, you kind of get caught up again of what things are like when you have that family around you. Like, oh, that's right, my dad walks like this, or the smell of Poland is like those type of touches. I wish the film, for a film that has lots of quiet, humanizing moments, had, for instance, one of the striking moments is when the Israeli mother drops her bicycle and her biological son helps pick it up, and she grabs his hands and she starts feeling them and recognizes how they're
no words are said, but there's something going on there.
I love those touches, and I think the film could have benefited from those just because I have lived through these experiences myself, and those are just the things that happen. I do wish there was more conversations of I get it because the film is about these two families from rivaling cultures. They're very guarded. There are members that don't want this to happen. I get that, but I do wish there was just scenes of them sitting down and discussing family stuff and kind of like informing the sons about, oh, this thing happened in the family. This. Just some more of that, because that's what it's been like for me, where it's just like, ooh, let me tell you about this uncle that we had and how they did this, or this family member.
There was a mention of like, oh, the grandmother died. Like you could have told the Palestinian son, like, oh, you were technically related to her, actually. Or,
let me tell you about her.
Yeah,
right, or stuff like that could have been in the movie more.
Yeah, like small but really sincere and realistic things. Yeah, for sure. Because the ones that you mentioned, like those are all really standout moments.
Yeah, and the more I'm verbalizing this, the more moments are flicking in my head, such as when Joseph visits his biological family and he asks, oh, not too much food, and the brother says, no, she made this for you because you've over here. Very true. That type of detail, oh yeah. That's something that struck a chord. I was like, yeah. Because you're the family. We got to put out the stuff, and I want to show you that this thing that I do is nice. Have the thing. I get that. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I can kind of touch upon. The awkwardness of this is very relatable to my situation, although all of the parties involved with my family's versions of this, where my dad had to meet his family and my mum had to meet her, everyone was super keen on doing it, or like at least wanting to do it. Not as like with these people, there is that level of I don't like directly. There are some family members who don't want this.
During the first meeting in the hospital, like they had a mediator handle the whole thing, and like
I loved him.
And like 2/5 of them didn't say a word the whole scene.
Yeah. Do you mind if I speak Hebrew? And there's just the look.
And then they spoke English, and it's like, oh, I know that language.
Yeah. Anything else you want to hit upon here?
My subtitles didn't have capital M's; they had underscores.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mine had trouble with numbers, so whenever there was a number, like numbers, it just would have a space between the numbers. Like whenever it said like 10 or whatever character, like ages or years, it would just have that, but that would be about it. Everything else worked.
A lot of the times where someone said the word my, it was just like underscore Y. I was like, okay.
One of the funny things, and again, subtitles, take this with a grain of salt, but I wouldn't be surprised because writing 101, there was some clunky moments of exposition in terms of, for instance, this is the one that stands out. The Palestinian father, to let us know that he has relatives that are French, he says, when he's got the son and the son has just come back from the aunt's place, he says, oh, how is my sister? Blah, blah, blah. After we've already been told in the movie that the son was staying at this sister's place. It was clunky like that.
I noticed that too, yeah.
I was like, did we need that? We understand that.
Yeah, drop the my sister and it's fine.
Yeah, like, how was Aunt such and such? How's she doing? And then you can have the son say, oh, yeah, she's going great. She would love to, have you over. And that him saying you would indicate, oh, we know that's his relative.
And before that point, like, the film
already explained it.
Yeah, but even beyond just that, like, the film has had things go unsaid but indicated. Like I mentioned earlier with the cinema scene, it's like, you're in the cinema suddenly, it's like, why didn't you tell me earlier? That tells you, oh, okay, they had the conversation already.
I think that's all I got to say about the other son. Anything else you want to touch upon?
I think we got it.
We got it. We got the other son. He's in the bag.
We're in.
What was the film that you confused this with on the podcast before? You said last week.
The Good Son?
Is that the one with Macaulay Culkin?
Yeah,
where he gets stung to death by bees? Or
no, I think that's the
evil killer.
Evil kid.
Kid.
And I think the good one was... What's Frodo's name?
Elijah Wood.
I think it was Elijah Wood was the good one.
Oh, he's the good son.
Yeah.
And Macaulay's the evil son.
I think Macaulay Culkin says, like, fuck you or something in that film when he's still a kid.
That's awesome. When he's a cute little kid.
Yeah, I think that was his, like, cute little kid era Macaulay Culkin, but, like, he's evil. I think. I haven't actually seen it.
I've seen Richie Rich. Well, that's it for The Other Son. We will be talking next time on the podcast, a listening people's suggestion, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a Ryan suggestion.
Is it?
It's me, Ryan, listening people.
Oh,
do you need time to pick something?
No. Don't you do this to me. My brain is so screwed up from just having to be back. You know what it is? It's being back physically recorded. My brain still can't comprehend that we're back here again. You're right. It's a me one. I forgot that last week we did... that's what threw me off, because we kind of cheated. That's it.
For our 100 episode milestones, we do a listening people's choice, but it's actually us picking a Paul Giamatti film.
You're right. You got me, guys. I'm going to jail. You've got me here. I'm being thrown into the lake of fire.
I think we had the same kind of mistake a few weeks ago.
Yes, I'm just fucking it up all the time. It's a me suggestion, everybody. We all love my suggestions.
I do like your suggestions. I look forward to them.
I keep trying to think of films I could suggest that you hate, because they really bring up fun conversations. But then I go, but I want to watch a fun movie. Like, I keep doing that, where I go, I want to watch a fun film that I enjoy.
One of the films that I was thinking for this non-Hollywood choice was like, I could pick that because I've seen it, but I know Ryan really loves that film. I'll let that be his film.
Yes. Well, I want to do a sci-fi film, if that's okay with you. I don't
get a say, so yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Fuck you. I do believe it's from 2008, a film called Moon.
Okay, I know that.
Have you seen it?
No, I mean, I know what the Moon is.
It stars Sam Rockwell, directed by Duncan Jones, David Bowie's son. And it stars Kevin Spacey as well. But he's a voice, so...
Well, his last name is Spacey, so...
He's in space. So Moon will be our discussion for next episode. Bartek, since you don't know this film, I obviously suggest looking up nothing about it. Just let it happen.
Cool.
It's a sci-fi movie.
Don't have to know Israel, Palestine.
Moon's involved. The moon is Moon. Kevin Spacey's a voice, and Sam Rockwell's in the movie. For some reason, you'll know somebody else is in the movie too. You'll see.
Cool.
Or maybe you won't. We'll talk about it next week.
Oh, it's that guy.
Oh, of course. So that is it from us. You can find us on the social medias of Facebook and Twitter at Spit and Polish Presents. We are posting stuff on there, discussing things, all of that great stuff. We have our email at spitandpolished@gmail.com, which is all in the description of this episode. You can easily find it. You can rate and review us on whatever podcast, hosting, platform, site, whatever, catcher.
If our name's on it, you can review us.
You can review us, give us a 5 stars, say, I like the one whose name sounds like how it's spelt, Bartek.
Yeah, not Rian.
Rian? Yeah. They see your last name, it's like, yeah, it said how it's spelt. right. And they nod.
Kasprazius.
That's all we've got for you this time round, Bartek. A pleasure, my other son.
Thank you, my dad, I guess.
My real dad.
My real dad, yes. I thought the dad I had was my dad, but actually you were my dad.
Well, we're still both Polish dads.
Yeah. See, I was thinking like, oh, I'll do a gag about us being swapped at birth, but we weren't born on the same day, so I had to come up with like an idea of like, oh, you were born in late May, and then the guy who, like the doctor who, helped the birth happen, like, it kept you for a little while because you had to work something out, and then like September.
Yeah, we'll work out an equation.
Yeah. He's like, what? And then September 5th, like he took you over to like Kempsey, and it was like
Father's Day.
And then he was like, "Oh, I got it." And there's like, "Nope, no, I'm just gonna give him back." And then he accidentally picks me up and takes me back to Melbourne.
Yeah, that's how it happened.
Yeah. But the father thing, maybe that's a bit funnier. I actually think mine's funny, but you just go with it.
How about this?
The episode's not over yet.
How about this? I was adopted by a black family, and you were adopted, and you're a Trump supporting family.
Am I black?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
People don't know what you look like. Not everyone. Not every one of our listeners know.
You once posted a picture of me, but you put an egg over my face, so they know sort of what my upper body looks like.
They know you're egg-like.
Yeah, they might be able to see my hair and like my skin color, but there's a huge egg on my face, so you probably can't tell.
As always, Bartek has an egg on his face.